All right, thank you for staying with Citizen TV Monday Report and Kenya's Choice 2022. Just moments away from the inauguration of the President-elect, Dr. William Samoei Ruto. He officially transforms into the president, the 5th president of the Republic of Kenya tomorrow in the morning. Joining me in studio is Professor Macharia Munene, lecturer at USIU, is joining us online. Thank you so much for making time. Wanjiru Gikonyo is here, National Coordinator TISA. Asante sana for making time. And Dr. Duncan Ojuang, Dean, School of Law, African Nazarene University. We're talking about the president's legacy and the in-tray for Deputy President currently and the president-elect, William Ruto, who becomes the president tomorrow. We'd like to hear from you as well at Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Monday Report. Professor Munene, let me start with you on this. What do you think of President Uhuru's hits and misses in your own assessment?
Well, he did fairly well in foreign policy, comparatively better than in domestic policies. His first term appeared to be a little more cohesive than the second term. In terms of construction infrastructure, he's done very well. There is no second guessing there. And electricity connections, airports, seaports, he has done well in the world of infrastructure and communication. He has not done very well when it comes to cohesion of parties. And the image of the president and his deputy quarreling in public was not very good as part of his legacy. And that one was kind of disheartening to a lot of people. The recent election, if anything is to go by it, was kind of a referendum and the underclass uprising, because it appeared like an underclass uprising from the established order. And that uprising is something that required serious attitude change in terms of what people should expect and not expect.
Yeah.
So there are these things that will remain to be discussed.
Okay. Wanjiru, according to you, what are his hits and misses?
I think, one, I agree with Dr. Macharia, but I would say one of the hits would be e-governance, e-government to some extent, because by taking a lot of the government registration services online, that has eased the registration processes around that. Even though if you're a user of those processes, they are not fully virtual. I think there's still work to be done, but really that is definitely a milestone. Building on a process that started under the NAC administration, under the Kibaki administration. I think the misses for me have to do with devolution. Yeah. Up till, you remember in 2019, health service delivery ground to a halt in Kenya, and a large number of people died because of the doctor strike, which was due to the mismanagement of intergovernmental relations and the division of revenue, the sharing of revenue, the financing of county government. So I think President Uhuru never fully embraced or understood devolution, and I would say his advisors and his stance towards devolution was one of resistance until the very end. And it's only until we had COVID and the major, really the pandemic, that you saw an embracing of devolution, a recognition that you can't deliver health services to 50+ million people from central government, that from the national government you really need devolution. And then of course the economy, in terms of the management of debt, the policies around, macroeconomic policy, around really just the economy and all that it pertains, that has been, I would say, some strong word, an unmitigated disaster, because we've seen one wrong step after another and you know, the government really just sabotaging itself in terms of the decisions it's made, in terms of where it's put money. So there are some good plans on paper that were implemented very poorly. And of course, then the corruption in large infrastructure projects, the state capture that has become the undoing of President Kenyatta in a very big way. It's something that's been used to really decampaign the Azimio party, of which he's, is it the chair?
Yeah, he's the chair.
Yeah.
Dr. Juang, do you see it like that? Because he did mention infrastructure. He talked about 11,500 kilometers of tarmac in almost his final address. Economic integration, he spoke about 2.5 trillion to counties. What, according to you, are his hits and misses?
I think there is, he has abbreviated a little bit.
Yeah.
The infrastructure is true that we are seeing mega projects, and you know, Africans like to see big things. But the issue was that the current corruption majorly in Africa is through projects. So you come with a project that might not be so essential. You know, Kenyans have lowered the expectation. They are saying, as long as I'm seeing a road, it doesn't matter whether it has been affixed, or as long as I see SGR, it doesn't matter whether it has costed 2, 3, 4 times what it has to be cost. Or there could have been another priority project that could have stimulated the economy better, or more jobs for more people, than mega project for a few people. Therefore, there is two economy for those who are doing very well and the rest. But I think basically, maybe in that trajectory, I will start with the downside. Of course, you know, what we were calling white elephant projects, that being BBI is the biggest white elephant that cobbled a lot of Kenya resources, time, and emotions, and misplaced them. Again, you know, the debt that has been mentioned, the spendthrift, or you know, the appetite for debt, and the weak rule of law. You know, a series of legal misadvice and missteps through and through, a series of them. But for his, again, he has done better in terms of, you know, maybe people used to say money is just taken. Now it is, there is something for it. You can bargain on, is it for value? I also think that, yes, I don't agree with Professor Macharia Munene, though is the international relation expertise, that I think he has shrunk the role of Kenya as an anchor state in East Africa community. Our relationship with Tanzania and Uganda have weakened. We are not the automatic and rival leaders. But to his credit, he has brought in Congo, which is the largest market in East Africa, with a lot of opportunities. I'm seeing a lot of private investors investing in Congo, equity, and that has opened up a lot of opportunity. Under his governance and his relationship with Ethiopia, a lot of Kenya business have also expanded in Ethiopia. And he has not done very bad in terms of visiting the entire Kenya. I think that is a good thing. He has visited a lot of places. Though somebody might say that, and therefore the handshake, whether it is the bridges, the unity, but again, you'll see that it didn't change much in terms of the skewed hiring, the tribalism in the appointments, in his government.
Yeah.
So it is like a tale of two cities.
Okay.
There is darkness and light at the same time. You talk of handshake, you talk of we are together, I've brought my brother, you go to Kisumu and you eat fish, but when it comes to appointment, we don't see much of a new path.
Okay. Let me bring in Macharia Munene and this. And Prof, let's talk about the economy for a bit. There's an argument that the president has put a plane on the runway. So it's upon the rest who are taking after him for that plane to take off. Because he did speak about it today in his address at State House. He spoke about the GDP having taken it in 2013 at 4.5 trillion. Now it is at 13 trillion. He also spoke about the income per capita at 127,000. Now it's 245,000. Is that argument, does that argument hold water that he set the country in the right trajectory, and the ripple effect will be felt after some time, in as much as it's not being felt now?
Well, there is usually a difference between macro projections and statements, and sometimes the reality on the ground at the micro level. So that gap between the macro and the micro is one that creates an awkward picture that people do not feel those big numbers, and therefore they feel left out or not part of the big numbers. And so now bridging that gap between the big numbers that sound very good, enough flowery, and the reality at the micro level becomes a problem that can have some political ramifications. The big numbers are good in the long run if they can be sustained. The inability to sustain those big numbers to be translated at the village level is something that can create discord. And you have some frictions.
Yeah.
And, saying they do not see what is being talked about.
Okay.
Because they don't feel it.
Yeah, and Dr. Juang disagrees with you that the foreign policy space has shrunk instead of expanding. What is your argument for it expanding?
Dr. Juang is a good man. He's a good friend. But if you listen to him, he said it has shrunk. And then he went on to discuss some advancements, some expansions, some positive things. So just listening to my friend, when you got the negatives in foreign policy and the positives, it looks as if the positives have the upper hand in that regard. They're saying that the Kenya's position in East African community may have shrunk. That's a subject of debate. Yes, Uganda likes being having a little problem with Kenya in many instances, even before Uhuru became president. Remember that story about an 1-acre island, where he claims that the water is his and the island it belongs to Kenya. So there are these things that have been there. And with Tanzania, we had some interesting ups and downs, which did not begin now. Because sometimes Tanzania has a problem figuring out whether it is in Eastern Africa or Southern Africa. And sometimes that pool affects the rest of the community, the East African community.
Okay.
So I don't disagree very much with Dr. Ojwang. It's only that his emphasis may be slightly different from mine.
Okay, so it depends on how you look at the glass, half empty or half full. But Wanjiru, you brought up the issue of health care delivery. He did speak about that again as well today in the evening, and he spoke about having increased the healthcare facilities to 1,912 to be exact, a 43% increment, 30 million Kenyans connected to water, 400% growth with NHIF. Isn't this enough?
Well, like I said, the trajectory in terms of service delivery, especially in health and water, has been benefited, paradoxically, from the COVID pandemic, because with the pandemic came a sense of urgency, that money needed to be committed and needed to be directed towards these services. And you saw all kinds of action taking place around water and around agricultural systems and also around health. Now, by 2017, of course, there's been growth. But, you know, you're talking about a GDP moving from 4 to 13 trillion. So what's the commensurate access to health service that would be there? NHIF, of course, in terms of health, we've seen the role that NHIF has played in terms of creating access. So yes, that's a good opening up NHIF to more, you know, to more users has been a benefit. But even the implementation of the National Health Insurance system has not been well managed. And you saw part of it is a governance issue, but then the other part of it is just inconsistencies in terms of policy, whereby you've had, you saw kind of a downgrading of access. Yeah. Some of the issues are, maybe you could say, are issues that would need to be sorted out, but in health in particular, and one of the styles of this government has been very project-oriented implementation, as opposed to policy that is well discussed, that brings the stakeholders. So by 2017, the increments in health were there, but they were marginal. And a lot of those increments were due to devolution. And devolution was being fought by the national government, inadequate resources. So some of the gains have been despite, you know, the presidency. They were because there is a constitution and the resources have had to go down, and you've got 47 governors, some of whom have done very, very well. So yes, there are gains, but are they in tandem with this GDP growth? Are they in tandem with the so-called investments? If you look at health, we've signed, you know, a regional protocol, the Maputo Protocol, that we should be spending 15% of our budget on health. Because health is really important in that the amounts that Kenyans pay on health services are impoverishing households. Households are not able to save between what we spend on food and what we spend on health services, and then to some extent also transportation and education. It means that Kenyans live hand to mouth. We are unable to save, so that the economy is unable to grow. So the question to ask really is, has the government of Uhuru Kenyatta done enough to enable Kenyans to enjoy health services without going out of pocket? And so, yes, there's been some marginal benefits, but not because of their policy. President Kenyatta was uncomfortable with health, was uncomfortable with agriculture to the extent that he was uncomfortable with devolution. He didn't see the vision. Trickle-down economics has not worked. The expenditure on large infrastructure has eaten into the overall budget. So you've seen allocations made to the health sector, and then midway, those allocations are reduced and redirected to debt repayment, to large infrastructure. So no, I think on economy, any successes that are there maybe have happened despite the policy of Uhuru Kenyatta, which was unfortunately captured around large infrastructure.
So almost like a fluke. Is that what you think also, Dr. Juang? Because he did mention issues around devolution. We actually put a figure to it. He said 2.5 trillion shillings has been sent to counties as evidence of him fostering and integrating devolution.
No, he's not a friend of devolution. That's short and clear. That is not a friend of devolved system. He's a fan of the one national system. But even when it comes to help, it is the same shooting from the hip kind of arrangement she's talking about, where We count buildings, we count the new paints and the smell of the paints as development, instead of the medicine in the hospitals, instead of the services in the hospital. I don't think, as important as it is, the building is important.
Yeah.
Remember the equipment leasing.
Yeah. Medical equipment
Scandal.
Yeah.
Is it scheme or scandal? At one point did it move? But remember, there were some counties that were cajoled to taking them. And at some point they admitted that we don't have the technicians, we have them here, but we are paying through our nose. And whether it was the right thing to do, to lease things rather than to buy. So the idea that, personalization of power, and that is where the new government is talking of the cartel kind of thinking, where you are thinking of creating individual gains and business for some people, and maybe coincidentally providing services to the people, so that when people are sick, people are not coming to hospital to smell the new paints. People want medicine. People want services. And so the government thinking as a service provider, but what you see is, for the sake of statistics, just counting and saying we have built this and this and this, and nobody cares about the quality of service in there and whether the doctors don't work, and most of the time they don't because they have not been paid. There is no medicine, and whether the cancer scandal come and the things are kept away, but we have the building there. I don't think that patients go to the hospital because there is buildings, though it's a good start. The same thing with a lot of things, so that, you tick some boxes and say, look, in Nairobi, look at all this, what we have built. But in essence, if I'm a patient and I go to an hospital, I come from a village where people preferred the missionary hospital. They were poorly built. But the new ones, they go into that container. They will get medicine, they will get a doctor, and they will get treatment. And I think that is the difference. That you don't pull a wool over your people's face by simply building and naming, instead of, and I can understand why. Nobody will see whether there is injection in the hospital, but people will see when they are driving through and say, wow, what a magnificent building. Nobody will see whether people are sharing beds 2 or 3, but they can see the new paint and the new billboards. So there is a little bit of priority in terms of government as a service provider, rather than just ticking boxes and saying we have big projects, we have counted, and that is what he was counting, that we have built this many hospitals. Tell me about the quality of the services.
Okay. Professor Macharia, is that your argument as well? Do you agree with that argument, or the brick and mortar is a start?
There has been some perceived disconnect between the projections and the deliveries. Yes, one of the challenges that President Uhuru faced and seems to have affected his image was the perception that he was unilateralist, that he did things, and there's been this accusation around without too much consultation on the stakeholders. And therefore, they come and complain, okay, something is being done there, but we know very little about it. And therefore, the input that would be needed to make it work would be missing. And so some projects may be started, and then they do not go very far because of the claim that there was very little consultation in terms of the other inputs. So the image of unilateralism did affect the perception of delivery and even the objective itself. because then people start wondering what was the actual objective. That is not very clear. The policy issue that was not elaborated. So the whole thing, which may have been good, then ends up being cut into shreds because there was that lack of communication. Communication was not very good in many of the things that President Uhuru did.
Okay, let's take a quick break here on Monday Report. When you come back, we're still continuing with this discussion. One other thing that the President mentioned was education, the transition to CBC and the 100% secondary transition. Was that a good thing or a bad thing? A hit or a miss? We'd like to hear from you. Trevor Mbija at Citizen TV Kenya. Use the hashtag Monday Report. We'll read some of your feedback in just a bit.